At this moment that Marshal Eberstein, chief of police, arrived. Chief Eberstein tried to tell the mob that its mission would best be served by letting justice take its course. The crowd refused to listen. By 6 p.m., droves swarmed about the courthouse on all sides. The crowd whistled revolvers, badges, and caps from policemen. They chased and beat every African American who ventured into the vicinity. White civilians who attempted to rescue black civilians were subject to physical abuse. The police had lost control of the crowd. By 7 p.m., most of the police had withdrawn to the interior of the courthouse. There, they joined forces with Michael Clark, sheriff of Douglas County, who had summoned his deputies to the building with the hope of preventing the capture of Brown. The policemen and sheriffs formed their line of last resistance on the fourth floor of the courthouse. The police were not successful in their efforts. Before 8 p.m., they discovered that the crowd had set the courthouse building on fire. Its leaders had tapped a nearby gasoline filling station and saturated the lower floors with the flammable liquid. Shots were fired as the mob pillaged hardware stores in the business district and entered pawn shops seeking firearms. Police records showed that more than 1,000 revolvers and shotguns were stolen that night. The mob shot at any policeman. 7 officers received gunshot wounds, although none of the wounds were serious. Lewis Young, 16 years old, was fatally shot in the stomach while leading a gang up to the 4th floor of the building. Witnesses said the youth was the most entrant of the mob's leaders. Pandemonium reigned outside the building at 17th and Douglas Streets, 1 block from the courthouse. James Heichel, a 34-year-old businessman, was shot and killed. The mob continued to strike the courthouse with bullets and rocks, and many civilians were caught in the midst of the mayhem. Spectators were shot while women were thrown to the ground and trampled. Blacks were dragged from streetcars and beaten. Many members of the mob even inflicted minor wounds upon themselves. About 11 o'clock, when the frenzy was at its height, Mayor Edward Smith came out of the east door of the courthouse into 17th Street. He had been in the burning building for hours. As he emerged from the doorway, a shot rang out. "He shot me. Mayor Smith shot me," a young man in the uniform of the United States soldier yelled. The crowd surged toward the mayor. He fought them. One man hit the mayor on the head with a baseball bat. Another slipped the noose of a rope around his neck. The crowd started to drag him away. "If you must hang somebody, then let it be me," the mayor said. The mob dragged the mayor into Harney Street. A woman reached out and tore the noose from his neck. Men in the mob replaced him. Civilians wrestled the mayor from his captors and placed him in a police automobile. The thrower overturned the car and grabbed him again.
Look at all them mob of people, man. Don't make no goddamn sense.
Circled the mayor's neck.
While you see a burning body burning, what the fuck, yo? The smell of burning flesh would just make me throw up, yo. It goes to show you how demonic and sick them motherfucking asses were.
Smith was suspended in the air when State Agent Ben Bender drove a high-powered automobile.
Burning flesh is awful,
to the base of the signal tower. In the car with Danmo were city detectives Al Henderson, Charles Denson, and Lloyd Toland. They grasped the mirror, and Russell Norgard untied the noose. The detectives brought the mirror to Ford Hospital. There he lingered between life and death for several hours, finally recovering. They shall not get him. Mob rule would not prevail in Omaha. The mayor kept muttering.
Look at that shit.
Trapped in the building, I could possibly burn to death.
Look at that shit.
These slips of paper were thrown from the 4th floor on the west side of the building. On one piece was scribbled, "The judge says he will give up Negro Brown. He is in a dungeon. There are 100 white prisoners on the roof. Save them.
Look at that shit, yo.
Come to the 4th floor of the building, and we will hand the Negro over to you." The mob in the street cheered at the last message.
That shit crazy.
Boys and young men placed firemen's ladders against the building. They mounted to the 2nd story. One man had a heavy coiled rope on his neck, and another carried a shotgun. 2 or 3 minutes after unidentified men had climbed to the 4th floor, Will Brown had been captured. A few minutes later, his lifeless body was hanging from a telephone post at 18th and Harney Street. Hundreds of revolvers and shotguns were fired at the corpse as it dangled in midair.
He was already fucking dead.
Then the rope was...
The fuck?
Brown's body was tied to the rear end of an automobile. It was dragged through the streets to 17th and Dodge Streets, 4 blocks away. The oil from red lanterns used...
Can you imagine, yo, they dragging his ass for 4 fucking blocks with all that goddamn blood, missing parts and shit on his body?
Members of the mob hauled the charred remains through the business district for several hours. Sheriff Clark said the black prisoners hurled Brown into the hands of the mob as his leaders approached the stairway leading to the county jail. Clark also reported that Brown moaned, "I am innocent. I never did it. My God, I am innocent," as he was surrendered to the mob. The lawlessness continued for several hours after Brown had been lynched. Both the police patrol and emergency automobiles were burned. The riot lasted until 3 a.m. on the morning of September 29th. At that hour, federal troops under command of Colonel John E. Morris of the 20th Infantry arrived from Fort Omaha and Fort Crook. Troops manning machine guns were placed in the heart of Omaha's business district in North Omaha, the center of the black community, to protect civilians there, and in South Omaha to prevent more mobs from forming. Peace was enforced by 1,600 soldiers. On October 1st, 1919, Brown was laid to rest in Omaha's Potter's Field. The interment log listed only one word next to his name: lynched.